On the 26th of November 2010, an elderly woman walked into her local police station in the Jiangsu city of Changshu and calmly declared she was there to turn herself in. Slightly amused by the 64-year-old woman's declaration, the officers on duty asked what she'd done. Calm and emotionless, the woman told them she'd ended someone's life. Now taking her more seriously, officers took the woman into an interview room and began asking questions. Coldly and without feeling, the old woman Liu Xiu Ying confessed that she'd taken the life of her son's wife only hours earlier. She told police the body was in their apartment and gave them the address. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the front door to the apartment had been left unlocked and sensed a strong smell of gasoline in the air. Entering the room, they immediately found the victim lying on the floor in a pool of blood and soaked in the gasoline officers smelt before entering. Lying next to the body was a knife with a 20-centimeter long blade. The victim was identified as a 31-year-old university teacher, referred to in reports as Xu Yili. Only when medical examiners took a closer look at the body did the brutal nature of the attack on the woman become clear. She'd received 12 knife wounds, her carotid arteries had been severed along with the jugular veins. Her head only remained attached to the body by a flap of skin. The head of the victim had been soaked with gasoline, as if her mother-in-law intended to set her on fire. The police now had the task of tracking down the husband of Xu Yili to inform him his mother had ended the life of his wife, as well as trying to find out exactly what happened in the apartment. According to Liu Xiu Ying, she got into an argument with her son's wife earlier in the day. While she was moving a barrel of gasoline around, she spilled some on the floor, and thinking of the argument, she decided to splash a little on Xu Yili just to scare her. Having gasoline poured over her head did indeed scare the teacher, but also angered her. She finally snapped at the person she'd endured living with since marrying her son, and got up to attack the old woman. She slipped in the gasoline on the floor and fell to the ground. Liu Xiu Ying didn't hesitate. As Xu Yili struggled to get up, the old woman attacked her viciously with a knife, cutting deep into her neck repeatedly. At the end of her confession, Liu Xiu Ying told police she very much regretted her actions, but interviewers never saw any hint of remorse in her face, or heard any sign of contrition in her voice. The son of the perpetrator and husband to the victim had been away on a work-related trip at the time. Dong Gangbiao was a professor at the same university his now-deceased wife worked. When police got in contact and informed him of what happened, his reaction was a touch surprising. While he showed obvious upset about the fate of his wife, it seemed like it was something he almost expected, saying that the two women in his life often quarreled, and he tried to act as mediator between them but could do little to stop the conflicts. What surprised police even more was his reaction to his mother. He showed little anger towards her, and didn't blame her for what she'd done. The family of Xu Yili reacted with natural despair when informed of her death, but that was also tinged with a sense that they believed something like this was going to happen one day. Relationships between husbands or wives and their in-laws can often be fractious and difficult, and that was certainly the case here. Police began the task of trying to piece together what actually led to a woman in her 60s brutally slaughtering the wife of her son and mother to her grandchild. Born in 1979 in Jiangsu province, Xu Yili grew up in a family of scholars. Both her parents were university professors, and with that kind of influence and the living conditions it provided, their daughter also excelled in her education. After graduating high school, she attended the China University of Mining and Technology, eventually going on to receive a doctorate in her chosen field at the age of 26. She went on to follow in her parents' footsteps, and took a teaching position in the Changshu Institute of Technology. It was here she would meet her future husband Dong Gangbiao. The early life of Dong Gangbiao couldn't have been more different than that of his future wives. Born in 1973, he hailed from a small village on the outskirts of the city Jining in the province of Shandong. He grew up in extreme poverty, and was the fourth child of Liu Xiu Ying, who was on her third husband at this point in her life. The young Dong Gangbiao, despite the obstacles he faced due to the extreme poverty of his childhood, would become what is referred to in China as a Fenghuangnan, which translates to Phoenix Man. It is used to describe a man who rises out of poverty through education, and leaving behind his rural home, moves to live and work in the city. Dong Gangbiao had done just that, earning a master's degree and a position teaching Marxist philosophy at the Changshu Institute of Technology. The pair met at a social event for young professors organized by the university. The two quickly became enamored with each other and entered into a relationship. However, the differences in their backgrounds were major points of concern for the parents of Xu Yili. While impressed and complimentary about the obvious effort Dong Gangbiao had made to pull his family out of poverty, they felt that his family being uneducated would only create conflicts, as they would likely hold more traditional, outdated views. They were also concerned that the young professor didn't have what in the past were prerequisites for a man looking to marry, of a home, car, and savings. Their daughter had made up her mind, and nothing her parents could say would change it. She was in love with Dong Gangbiao and intended to marry him. Her stubborn decision would introduce her to Liu Xiu Ying. When they told Liu Xiu Ying about their intention to marry, they were surprised to discover that she too opposed the marriage. She felt that her son was too good for the young woman who achieved a doctorate at 26 years of age, and that he deserved better. Born in a village belonging to the city of Baoji, in Shanxi province, Liu Xiu Ying was on her third marriage when she gave birth to Dong Gangbiao. At that time in China there was something of a stigma towards divorce, many couples enduring miserable or abusive marriages because of it. Unusually, Liu Xiu Ying had already been divorced twice before having Dong Gangbiao with her third husband, but that marriage also wouldn't last, the man deciding to end the relationship. Xu Yili and Dong Gangbiao, married in 2007, they would register the marriage without telling their parents beforehand so neither family could object, and try to talk them out of it. Teachers in Chinese schools at most levels tend to reside in campus dormitories, and when the pair got married they moved into the slightly larger room of Xu Yili. They intended to live there until they'd saved enough money to purchase a home. The room was fairly small, but large enough to house the couple comfortably. In the coming months, there'd be a third occupant arriving. Xu Yili announced she was pregnant shortly after the marriage. With the couple now sharing a campus apartment, the room used by Dong Gangbiao was empty. He suggested inviting his mother to come stay there, so she could help them out during the pregnancy. Xu Yili agreed with the idea, no one being able to foresee the tragic consequences of the decision. When a couple have a baby in China, especially newlyweds having their first child, it is common practice to have one of the spouse's parents come stay with them to help take care of the newborn and household chores. This is supposed to help take the pressure off the new parents, and allow both of them to continue working, in the case where both have a job. With his mother being divorced, and not in the best of health, Dong Gangbiao felt that the more comfortable standard of living in the city would be good for her, so she was invited to Changshu to help out while Xu Yili was going through her pregnancy. Liu Xiu Ying accepted the offer, and soon made the move to Changshu. Despite her new home being considerably more comfortable than her home in Jining, she wasn't happy. She felt lonely being in the dormitory by herself, and wanted to live with her son. While the other room was a little bigger than the single-room accommodation of Dong Gangbiao, it was still only made up of the living room, bedroom and area for a kitchen and washroom. Xu Yili had only met Liu Xiu Ying once before, when Dong Gangbiao introduced her to his mother as the woman he intended to marry. The meeting hadn't been especially friendly. Liu Xiu Ying opposed the marriage, and made her feelings clear, telling her prospective daughter-in-law that she would never break up the relationship between her and her son. But Xu Yili was determined to make Liu Xiu Ying comfortable in the new environment. Since she wanted to share their room, they had to make it so the lounge could double up as a bedroom. Xu Yili did what she could to make the space comfortable. She bought a folding bed, which could be put away during the day, along with other items Liu Xiu Ying would need to feel at home, and give her a little privacy. However, once Liu Xiu Ying moved in, it wouldn't take long before issues began to arise. On seeing the bed set up for her in the living room, Liu Xiu Ying complained, saying she didn't want to sleep there by herself. She asked her son to move the bed into the bedroom so that she could sleep with them both. When told about this, Xu Yili found it very strange. She wasn't keen at all to have Liu Xiu Ying effectively sleeping alongside them. She made her displeasure clear to Dong Gangbiao, but he seemed unable to disobey his mother. Dong Gangbiao asked her to be more patient with the situation. His mother was old, adjusting to a new environment, and things weren't easy for her. Xu Yili reluctantly agreed to allow Liu Xiu Ying to share the bedroom with them, but would frequently complain about the situation to her parents. The issues would only continue as time went on. Liu Xiu Ying had a very traditional view of what the role of a woman should be. In her opinion, the woman of the house was there to take care of the home and her husband. By working, Xu Yili wasn't fulfilling the so-called 3 obediences and 4 virtues a wife should. She would make comments about how dirty the room was, and wouldn't be shy about telling Xu Yili she needed to do more around the house to be a good wife to her son. She even told Xu Yili that when Dong Gangbiao came home from work, a good wife would get down on her knees and remove her husband's shoes. Trying to be understanding, Xu Yili just attempted to grin and bear it. Her parents' words about the differences in family backgrounds causing issues, ringing loudly in her ears. But the issues continued to accumulate. People who grew up in the extreme poverty of rural China, particularly from the 1950s to 1990s, have a very frugal attitude towards money ingrained into them. Even today, where the standard of living has improved so much for many people, and China is a totally different country than it was previously, still the memories of people who experienced the hardships of the past remain. In modern residential communities in cities, a common sight will be elderly residents living with their children, going through bins picking out anything recyclable so they can claim money for it, no matter how small the amount is. For older Chinese people, every penny counts, and they do all they can to save money. When Liu Xiu Ying saw the water bill the home was running up, she decided to help them save money. Believing the water meter would run slower if faucets were just left dripping, she placed bowls under each one, letting them fill with slow drips all night. She also felt that flushing the toilet was a waste of money because of the water it used, so she simply stopped doing it. The smell this would leave filled the small apartment, and getting a good night's sleep with 2 other people crammed in the room snoring next to her, with the sound of dripping taps all night, was near impossible for the pregnant Xu Yili. One night, now 4 months pregnant, she got up to use the bathroom. One of the bowls being filled by a dripping tap had overflowed onto the tile floor. Xu Yili slipped in the water and fell to the ground hard. She immediately started feeling pains from her womb. Fearing she was going to miscarry her first child, she was rushed to hospital. Fortunately, everything was fine, but the incident understandably terrified her. She pleaded with Dong Gangbiao to speak to his mother about the water, but once again he seemed unwilling to challenge Liu Xiu Ying about anything and asked his wife to be more understanding. In the autumn of 2007, during the school summer holidays, the family of Xu Yili invited their daughter, Dong Gangbiao, and Liu Xiu Ying to their home, hoping to give their daughter a little respite from the problems. The Xu family did everything they could to make Liu Xiu Ying feel welcome. They took her out for meals at restaurants that cooked her hometown food, on shopping sprees to buy new clothes, and even paid for much-needed medical treatment for issues she was having with her eyes. Liu Xiu Ying showed her hosts nothing but gratitude for the kindness displayed to her, saying that she was sorry she would never be able to repay them for what they'd done. She seemed to be a different woman. Xu Yili and her family hoped that now the situation would improve. To further help their daughter, the parents of Xu Yili put a down payment on a larger home, hoping that more living space would help ease the tensions between them. The new apartment had a garage with it, and since neither Xu Yili nor Dong Gangbiao had a car, the space was going to waste. Liu Xiu Ying suggested allowing her eldest son and his family to move into it. Dong Gangbiao spoke to Xu Yili, and she agreed it was a good idea. However, this was only because she hoped that if the other son moved in, Liu Xiu Ying would spend less time with her. A lot of money was spent on making the space habitable, and soon the half-brother of Dong Gangbiao made the move to Changshu. By the March of 2008, Xu Yili was getting close to her due date. Liu Xiu Ying, originally invited to live with them to help take care of the child, suddenly declared that she was too old to help look after the baby. This meant that Xu Yili would either have to give up her job, or ask her own parents for help. If that was the case, she didn't see any reason for Liu Xiu Ying to live in her home. As always, Dong Gangbiao argued on the side of his mother, again using the excuse that she was old, in poor health, and would be lonely going back to her hometown, especially now his half-brother had also moved in with them. Close to giving birth, Xu Yili didn't have the energy to argue, and just accepted it for the time being. In April 2008, she gave birth to a son, and went to her parents' home to spend her period of postpartum confinement. In China, it is a traditionally held belief that after giving birth the new mother should do her 坐月子, meaning that they should rest for a month, and avoid going outside to help them recover physically from the birth. There are various beliefs and traditions around this period, some believing that the woman shouldn't brush her teeth, some believe the woman shouldn't talk, but all agree the woman needs to rest. During this time, Liu Xiu Ying, when visiting, would complain about how lazy Xu Yili was being, telling her that she herself was back in the fields farming, a couple of days after giving birth. Once she was ready to return to work, since they were going to get no help from Liu Xiu Ying, she asked her own parents to help out taking care of her son, which they were more than happy to do. It was probably for the best, as the situation in her home continued to deteriorate. With both Xu Yili and Dong Gangbiao being teachers, the home was often filled with papers, from prepared classes to students' assignments. Liu Xiu Ying would often go around the room, picking up the papers and throw them out, not checking or caring if they were important or needed. Curiously, she would never manage to throw out any of her son's paperwork by mistake. It was only Xu Yili who would find her work missing. No longer pregnant, and worried about stressing herself out, Xu Yili began to voice her displeasure, and regular arguments would occur. She looked to her husband for support, but he constantly made excuses for his mother. He would point to her age, her hard life, and health problems to excuse her actions, and began blaming his wife for the problems. Xu Yili would get a break on weekends, going to spend that time in her parents' home with her son, increasingly feeling like a stranger in her own apartment. Sometime in 2008 it was discovered that Liu Xiu Ying required surgery. This would bring another member of the family to the home, this time the half-sister of Dong Gangbiao. However, it'd once again be Xu Yili and her family picking up the tab. They paid for the medical treatment, and gave the half-sister 10,000 RMB, as compensation for her taking time off work to take care of the old woman. Around this time, Dong Gangbiao decided to get his doctoral degree, and as a result was spending more time away from home, leaving his wife and mother together without his presence to supposedly calm arguments. Now, when returning home after work, Xu Yili would often find herself locked out of her own apartment. Arriving home late in the evenings, the door would be locked from the inside by Liu Xiu Ying, who'd claimed she'd done it by accident. Xu Yili had to knock on the door to be allowed into her own home, often for several minutes. This only happened when Dong Gangbiao was away, and happened on a far too regular basis for it simply to be an accident. In a further attempt to supposedly help save money, Liu Xiu Ying would shut off the electricity to rooms she wasn't using. Predictably, this would only inconvenience Xu Yili when she was at home working. The need to save money suddenly became less important when Dong Gangbiao was there. When the electricity was on, things weren't much better. Liu Xiu Ying would turn the volume of the TV up to the maximum, claiming her old ears found it difficult to hear when Xu Yili complained. However, her hearing would improve suddenly and perhaps unsurprisingly when Dong Gangbiao returned home. It was now getting far too much for Xu Yili. She felt she'd been more than understanding, but things clearly were not working. She told Dong Gangbiao that his mother had to move out. She didn't mind if it was back to one of their rooms on the college campus, or back to her hometown, but she had to go. As usual, Dong Gangbiao defended his mother, saying she was sick, and told his wife her attitude needed to change. The quarrels between Xu Yili and Liu Xiu Ying now spread to the husband and wife, but they would go beyond being verbal. Dong Gangbiao physically beat her for criticizing his mother. Until recent years, the issue of domestic abuse in China was something that would often be dealt with privately, if it wasn't being ignored. Families would avoid getting police involved, and that was the case here. When Xu Yili told her parents that Dong Gangbiao had hit her, they came to the home to speak to him. When confronted, Dong Gangbiao wept and begged for forgiveness, getting down on his knees in front of the family. He was asked to write a confession to what he'd done, and to promise that it would never happen again, or he'd lose everything the Xu family had paid for in any divorce proceedings, and would never see his son again. Dong Gangbiao did as asked, but it wasn't enough for Xu Yili. She began spending as little time in her home as possible. Things had improved a little, but she knew arguments could break out at any time. Instead, she stayed with friends or in her campus dormitory. One last argument pushed her over the edge, at a birthday celebration for Dong Gangbiao. Xu Yili arrived unavoidably late, and was immediately insulted and lambasted by Liu Xiu Ying. Previously, Arguments had taken place behind closed doors in their home. Now the old woman was publicly humiliating her in front of the whole family. She shouted back at the old woman and received a slap in the face from Dong Gangbiao. The next day she filed for a divorce. On November 26, 2010, Xu Yili was in her bedroom at home preparing for an upcoming exam. Dong Gangbiao was away studying for his own doctorate, leaving the two women together. Xu Yili stayed in her bedroom as much as possible to avoid Liu Xiu Ying, but as she tried to study she found it hard to concentrate as Liu Xiu Ying was watching TV, with the volume full blast in the lounge. Xu Yili came out and asked Liu Xiu Ying to turn the sound down, but the old woman refused. In response, Xu Yili unplugged the TV and went back to the bedroom. She voiced her frustrations to a friend in a series of texts, but before long the TV was back on, the sound filling the entire apartment. Only moments after this Xu Yili would be dead. What the exact chain of events were are hard to say for certain, but what police suspected from their investigation of the crime was as follows. An argument broke out between the two sometime around 11 in the morning. At the time, the manager of a shop in the community believed he heard someone shouting for help, but the shouts quickly went silent, so he wasn't sure if that's what he'd heard. After a confrontation, Liu Xiu Ying poured gasoline over Xu Yili with the intention of setting her alight. The gasoline got into the eyes of Xu Yili, temporarily blinding her, and the substance on the tile floor caused her to slip to the ground. As she tried to get up, Liu Xiu Ying sat astride her back with a knife from the kitchen, and repeatedly thrust it into the face and neck of Xu Yili. After ending the life of her son's wife, Liu Xiu Ying then went to take a shower, and changed her clothes before leaving the apartment. She was caught on CCTV cameras disposing of a cigarette lighter as she walked to a restaurant on the way to the nearest police station. She stopped at the restaurant and ordered some noodles for lunch, eating them slowly before finally getting up and turning herself in. On the 11th of November 2011, Liu Xiu Ying faced trial for the intentional homicide of Xu Yili. During the trial, she would claim that she had a very good relationship with her victim, and talked about Xu Yili being a wonderful person. She went on to say that any issues between them were in reality caused by the mother of Xu Yili, whom Liu Xiu Ying blamed for provoking any disagreements. She went on to justify her actions by claiming it was actually Xu Yili who came at her with the knife, threatening to chop the elderly woman up into meatballs. After that she was upset, and decided to scare her victim with the gasoline. She claimed she never intended things to go so far, but after the two scuffled she got angry, and attacked with the knife. The presence of the gasoline in the home was a major issue for Liu Xiu Ying, and her claims that she hadn't planned to end the life of Xu Yili. China, unsurprisingly, is quite strict about who it allows to go to a gas station and purchase the substance. At the majority of gas stations, vehicles are filled by attendants. Drivers generally can't operate the pumps. Police investigating the case found that towards the end of October, Liu Xiu Ying had gone to a nearby gas station with a plastic bucket to try and purchase some gasoline. The staff remembered the unusual incident very clearly, and told her that there was no way they'd sell her any. This happened shortly after Xu Yili had filed for divorce. Later, on November 11th, Liu Xiu Ying visited a hardware store to buy a metal canister. She then paid someone 400 RMB to fill the canister with 50 RMB worth of gas, which she hid in the home over the following weeks. Police could find no reason whatsoever as to why Liu Xiu Ying needed to purchase the gasoline. There was also a plethora of evidence which disputed the claim of Liu Xiu Ying that she had a good relationship with Xu Yili. There were numerous communications made with friends and family that detailed the issues. They even had the words of Liu Xiu Ying when Dong Gangbiao came to the police station. She happily told her son he didn't have to worry about the divorce anymore. Liu Xiu Ying also lied about how many times she thrust the knife into her victim, saying it was only twice while the real number was 12. Her actions after the incident also made her claim that it wasn't intentional questionable. Rather than call for help after, she took a shower, changed her clothes, went to have lunch, all before finally turning herself in. Everything seemed to point to this being a planned act. Liu Xiu Ying was found guilty of intentional homicide and sentenced to death. However, given her age and that she'd recently been diagnosed with cancer, the death penalty was suspended for 2 years. After the sentencing, Dong Gangbiao wrote a letter to the court, asking for understanding and leniency towards his mother, saying it wasn't her fault. Liu Xiu Ying would be released from prison after serving only 2 years of her sentence, on compassionate grounds as her health significantly worsened during her incarceration. When news of the incident first got attention, there were a lot of rumors about Xiu Ying spread online, all seemingly trying to paint her in a negative light. There were claims that she was physically abusive towards Liu Xiu Ying, that she refused to allow the woman to see her grandson, but it was later believed that this was being done by family members to try and drum up public sympathy towards Liu Xiu Ying. After the trial, there was a very different feeling towards the people involved, and Dong Gangbiao in particular. He would force the parents of Xiu Ying to sign the home they'd paid for over to him, threatening to send his son to his hometown village if they didn't. He continued to reside in the house he now owned, despite never having paid a penny towards it, and that it was the scene of his wife's death. He then married again a few years after the incident, his new wife joining him and his mother in the home, which was now worth considerably more money than when it was originally purchased. He reportedly achieved his doctorate, and went on to become an associate professor at the university. It is perhaps because of the apparent smooth sailing of his life after the death of Xiu Ying that the public eyed him with a certain amount of suspicion. Dong Gangbiao stood to lose everything if the divorce went through. He'd essentially signed a confession to the family admitting he'd committed domestic abuse against his wife on a number of occasions. This would have certainly seen Xiu Ying get custody of his son. Their home was purchased by his wife's family, so he would have lost the home that was also housing his half-brother's family. Furthermore, since both Dong Gangbiao and Xiu Ying were working at the same university, if news of his domestic abuse came out, it was very likely he'd lose his job. With the death of his wife, he kept his son, home, and his career went from strength to strength. His mother served little time in prison, due to him writing a letter of understanding, essentially forgiving her, and her cancer diagnosis, which both Dong Gangbiao and Liu Xiu Ying were aware of before she ended the life of Xiu Ying. Once again, the gasoline would be what truly stood out as unusual. There was no reason for it being in the home, and people found it strange that an elderly, illiterate woman who had never driven before would suddenly come up with the idea of going to a gas station to purchase some. There was no explanation given at any time from Liu Xiu Ying why she bought or needed it. She had attempted to buy it weeks in advance, and somehow been able to hide the canister in the small home without her sons noticing it. The only time she decided to use it, after paying 400 RMB, was a time when her son was away from the home. Spending so much money on something she seemingly had no real use for appeared strange for a woman who previously was so concerned about saving money. She would leave taps dripping into bowls, refuse to flush the toilet after using it, and turn off the electricity when her son wasn't home. People couldn't help but be left with the feeling that, possibly, the death of Xiu Ying, perhaps, wasn't just down to an argument going too far. And that just maybe, getting Xiu Ying out of the picture, wasn't solely down to Liu Xiu Ying. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. And hope to see you again for the next dark tale from the Middle Kingdom.